how much or any pressure on Bielema and what he needs to do this year?
Pressure wise, man, I don't think there's any pressure on Bielema at Arkansas right now. To be honest with you, because of the fact of I don't think outside of maybe those that were kind of close to the program here at Arkansas realize how much of a dumpster fire John L. Smith left behind whenever he left here during that interim that he was here. Bielema came in and even openly admitted after the 3-9 season that, man, maybe I bit off a little more than I could chew in a press conference, and alluded to that. And I really think that was that was true. I mean, I think he thought he had more here because it was an SEC school. He thought there'd be more depth. Reality of it is I don't think that was the case. I think once he got in and started trying to put scheme and things together, he realized that just wasn't what he had going on. So, to answer your question, I mean, if you look at them, they're trending up every year. Recruiting class, top 25 recruiting class this year. You got a blue chip 5-star in McTell Agim, Sosa that's on campus right now, who actually got some practices in prior to the Liberty Bowl. This guy's, man, he's a beast, fellas. I've talked to him and shook his hand and had a few conversations with him. He's an absolute just huge kid. He came in about 270 or so. Now he's up to about 290, and he possibly is going to be playing that R position, which is what Trey Flowers, who plays for the Patriots now, played at defensive end position. So I think with the staff that you've got and what they've been able to do, David, to answer your question, I think that really he's not under any pressure. I know some people may think that, but this guy's got a clear 5 years.
Yeah, so playing off the pressure thing, what are the expectations? Because he goes 0-8, he wins a couple games. You've seen the steady improvement. It's been very obvious. But kind of like Butch Jones in the East, I think jumping a team, and Arkansas was a little bit further down than Tennessee, but when you jump a team 3 or 4 wins and get to that 8-win total, that's great. You're 8-4. But to go from 8 wins to 10 or 11, those next 2 or 3 teams that you need to beat are serious. They're top 15 teams in that conference, especially in that division. So it's a quantum leap from here, even if it's only a couple more wins.
Yeah, I think what you have to look at, though, I agree with your assessment completely, but I think what makes it a little bit different and what the caveat is to that this year is the fact that there's really only 2 teams in the SEC that are bringing back experienced quarterbacks. The quarterback position, even more so in the West, but granted, Alabama has shown that they've been able to do things. Okay, we know that. They can bring in Joe Blow, come in there, and he's going to be able to get things done. It's just the way the system works for him. I think that outside of an Alabama, maybe with, it depends on how much work Brandon Harris puts in at LSU, considering they do have some extra help. Cam has some extra help now. That being said, I think if you look at it, if Arkansas is going to have a shot, it would be this year. You look at their home schedule, Mark. Their home schedule is very favorable. They get Alabama at home, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home. They get Florida at home. They've got a very, very favorable schedule for them this year. And I think that being that that's the case, if you're going to do it, despite the questions on the offensive side of the ball that they do have, which are plenty, they look to be able to reload on that side of the ball, which is something you would not normally say about an Arkansas team in the past several years, at least going on 5. It's been a while. Even when Petrino was here as head coach, you had some questions outside of maybe because you knew Mallett was redshirting, or had to sit out a year. You knew what you had with Ryan Mallett. So that's maybe a little bit of a different story. But that being said, I mean, it's been a while. But this team, I think this year, could very well find itself in an opportunistic situation where it could maybe get those extra 1 or 2 wins because of the quarterback situations at Mississippi State, Texas A&M. So I think that could be an opportunity for them, and Missouri at the end of the year. So as their cross-divisional rival. So I think it's highly possible. It's possible. I'm not willing to go there yet. I need to see more.
You know what's also interesting about the parallel between what Bielema did at Wisconsin and what he's in the process of doing at Arkansas is not just the style of play that you see on the field with the big, massive offensive line and the power running game and play action pass, and that being the kind of sequential order of the way he wants to attack, and that being the blueprint at Wisconsin, but the blueprint in terms of developing the program and going to a state that is at a disadvantage compared to its competition within the division, and more so in the Big Ten, the entire conference, not so much the Western Division, but being in that place where you can hope to get a top 25 class, and that's about where you're going to max out probably, but you're gunning for the big boys. You're gunning for Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan. If you're Wisconsin, you're gunning for, and pretty successful, as Wisconsin has been for the past 15 years under Barry Alvarez, then Bielema. And then at Arkansas, kind of the same formula. You're really going to have to coach them up, and you're really going to have to hope that your style of play is such a change-up from what everybody else sees, and your guys play over their heads, and you, again, coach them up, and you have a great coaching staff to win against a little bit better talent.
I think, maybe here's the thing with that assessment. Maybe in years past, more so, but I think what's going to shock some people in the coming years is the amount of depth that Arkansas actually has on campus. There's some very talented depth up there, especially in the secondary, that defensive line. I think they've got 9 returning starters this year. And again, like I said, they've got the 5-star that's already on campus. And you're right, though, with your assessment about the recruiting. One of the things I've talked to a blue blood, several boosters and things that have been around this program for a very long time, and they've talked about the fact that was one of the hardest things for Arkansas to overcome being in the SEC is recruiting, getting kids to actually get to campus. It's very difficult because Fayetteville is kind of out of the way. It's not really close to any major big city, although the area up there in northwest Arkansas is growing. It's a very fast-growing area, but that being said, it's not like where you go to College Station, you're not far from Houston, or you go to Tuscaloosa and you're not very far from Birmingham. Things of those nature. I mean, you've got something that you can kind of relate to. Even with Ole Miss at Oxford, they go to Memphis. So I mean, there's some things there that appeal. Within Fayetteville, it's not that way. So it is hard to get those kids. But you look, Mark, this year especially, look at this recruiting class. I think this recruiting class, in my opinion, for 2016 was a real feeling for what you're going to see in the future for Arkansas. They were competing for some 5-stars, including Christian Fulton, which ended up, he went to Florida and Arkansas his last 2 official visits, ended up committing to LSU, but he was really hard-pressed with Arkansas, so much so that his dad didn't want Bielema to come down and visit him. His dad is a staunch LSU guy, and he did not want Arkansas in the house at all, so it was kind of a unique storyline. But that being said, Arkansas found itself battling for, like you had talked about, battling with the big dogs for some recruits. And I think that's something that SEC people might have to get used to seeing with Bielema there, because he is going to be able to go out, attract the kids' attention, especially on the offensive line. Granted, you saw Pittman leave and jump to Georgia. Now you've got Kurt Anderson in, who's with the Buffalo Bills, who's automatically just taken off. He's already gotten 2017 four-star offensive lineman commit since he's been here. So I think that things are turning the table at Arkansas. It's just, I equate it a lot to the Patriots, Mark. They've built a dynasty, and they've done it over time. Belichick wasn't just coming in and knocking down doors. It took time to build a dynasty, and you see what they've done at Alabama. It took several years before Nick Saban got to that championship. I think it's what Bielema is going to have to do at Arkansas. If he wants to beat those guys, he's got to build up the depth first.
Did it take either one of them that long? Saban comes in 07, 09, he's got an undefeated team.
Yeah, I know, man. I know.
9, he wins the Super Bowl in 01. It seemed like a 2-year plan to me.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
but
well, they come off
well taken, definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Definitely well taken. So we want to remind everyone that we're here every Wednesday night on Blab. I'm sorry. We're not on Blab. We gave that a shot and just didn't work out for us. We're on Google Hangouts, but most importantly, you can find us on Twitter. You can also find the show at Mark Rogers TV, and we've got plans for all sorts of big doings here in the next few weeks. So we will unveil those plans as we go along for SEC Breakdown and a number of outlets going forward. All right, gentlemen,
David,
spring football.
Yeah, I think David had a question there.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up just one more on-field thing with Arkansas. Hunter Henry going to be tough to replace. He kind of seems like the security blanket for the quarterbacks. Who will it be? Jeremy Sprinkle who steps into that role for Hunter Henry as another tight end, or is it another position? Is it a running back who can catch out of the backfield, or is it a receiver who's going to emerge to kind of be that security blanket for the quarterbacks?
Yeah, you make a good point there. Hunter Henry is just going to be tough. You knew he was special from his freshman year. After winning the Mackey Award this year, it wasn't a surprise that he went pro. I think it's kind of what do you do if you're a tight end from that point forward. You mentioned Jeremy Sprinkle. He's definitely going to be your number one guy. Jeremy Sprinkle with Hunter Henry was a lot of times overshadowed. His athleticism, he reminds you a lot of O.J. Howard as far as athleticism goes from Alabama. But he's a hard-nosed tight end, so he will get in there and scrap and block. He's the type of guy that'll get in on the kickouts. I mean, he's just he's very physical, but, of course, you have to be with Bielema's system as a tight end. You're going to be right in the mix of things. So you look at him. You look at Will Gregg, the younger brother of NFL pro tight end Chris Gregg, who plays coincidentally for the Buffalo Bills. And so he's here on campus as well. Another guy, 6'5", 6'6", tight end, big boy, who's put on several pounds since he's been on campus now. They redshirted him last year and got him ready. There are several guys. You got to remember the year before last, Arkansas had 3 4-star tight ends brought in one class. So they've got depth there at that position. It's an area where they could actually take a couple of these guys like a Will Gregg and put him out and split him out wide a little bit and still have 2 tight ends on the field. That's the type of mismatches you're going to see out of this offense going forward. And one of the reasons why it was the second best passing offense in the SEC this last year was because of the utilization of the tight end, which helped to open things up for the other receivers. And you got to remember, too, guys, their top two of their top receivers were injured last season, with Cornelius being out, and of course Keon Hatcher went out early with a foot injury, and those guys are back. They're about 5 deep right now with wide receivers that they can rotate in at any given time, and I think it's probably going to be pretty interesting to see what translates out of that passing game going forward for the quarterback. But you talked about safety, David. What I'm concerned more about is the running back position. Simply because you have Cody Walker coming back, who had about 300-plus yards last year. You've got less than 30% of your rushing production coming back this year. That's not a lot. You've got a freshman who was injured last year in Raleigh Williams, who looked really promising before he got hurt. We suspect he'll be back this fall, but not sure. With that injury, it was pretty severe that he had suffered to his neck. So that we'll see if he comes back and in what kind of shape he's going to be in. They did move former New Jersey standout quarterback, dual-threat quarterback, Dewalt Mitchell, who was moved to wide receiver, has now been moved to running back to kind of help with that depth because they lost an Alex Collins and Jonathan Williams. That's a pretty hard duo to get past. And so they lost those guys. Then you've got incoming freshman Devwall Whaley, which they think will contribute right away. Bielema is known for rotating 3 deep at that position. You saw it at Wisconsin, the 3-headed monster they had back in 2010. I keep waiting to see that here at Arkansas. I'm waiting to see if they can accumulate a 3-headed monster like they did that year here in the SEC. If they're able to duplicate that in the SEC, that's going to be insane. But for those that don't know, that was almost a 3,000-yard rushing season, I believe, Mark. You can probably look that up for me and tell me, but that was insane to do. If they could do that here, I'll be pretty interested to see. They've got the talent there, but it's actually pretty shallow if you look at it. Cody Walker's not a guy that can sidestep you. He's a big 250-pound, 6'2" running back. He's not a guy that's going to be able to shimmy and shake like Alex Collins that could bounce back and make something happen out of nothing. He's a straightforward runner. He's a downhill runner. If you catch him at the ankles behind the line of scrimmage, it's over. So I'm curious to see who's going to lead that running back. That's the one that I'm more concerned about when it comes to having a brand new quarterback than any other position right now.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right here, Chad. I got it right here. You had Monte Ball, you had James White, and you had, of course, Melvin Gordon, who ran for 2,500 yards a few years later. And they were just like 20 or 50 or 60 yards away from the third guy having 1,000 yards. That's all they did is just ram it down your throat behind
Yeah,
like
I'm
three
curious
guys that went to the
if they
NFL.
can duplicate that here. If they can make the I think that's Bielema's goal, but with the success Enos has had in the passing game, I don't know if that's something he'll veer away from, because with the previous offensive coordinator, with Chaney, he didn't really give Chaney the full reins. Enos has had full reins, and you can tell from about game 2 or 3 on that was the case, because of, if you go back and watch the film and look at the progression of the passing game, you can see that Brandon Allen just exponentially went up as the season went along. So as far as quarterback is concerned, I think you're pretty good for Arkansas. Again, I go back to the running back, and, of course, losing the entire left side of your offensive line. It will be pretty interesting to see how they replace that, because to be quite honest with you, and this is another topic we can get into at another time, but I think this 2016 recruiting class definitely bombed on picking up offensive linemen. If you go back and look, they didn't really get the 4 guys that they wanted. They got 3 guys, 2 of which were 3-stars, and they've got a JUCO guy in Malone that's already on campus, but really didn't hit it out like they thought they would. I think the immediate impact of Pittman leaving was felt, but going forward with Kurt Anderson, I don't know if that'll be a problem.
Here you go, boys. John Clay. Forgot about John Clay. My goodness, 1,012.
Clay was a freshman, I believe.
Yeah, he was a bulldozer. This was before Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon was on the. It must have been a year before, 2010. So yeah, they were 4 yards away from having 3 guys. They had 1,052 with James White, 1,012 with John Clay, Monte Ball, who gained 1,000 yards in the NFL, close to it, 996. And those 3 guys scored 46 touchdowns rushing that season, 18, 14, and 14.
That's what I'm talking about. If you can duplicate that in the SEC, that's jaw-dropping.
Yeah, well, that's not going to be duplicated in the SEC.
Crazy thing is, the crazy thing is, you remember those guys? Those weren't a lot of goal line touchdowns either. Those were scampers, for 20 yards out.
Yeah, somebody got AOT, butt on the turf, with those runs. But here's the thing. What's quietly gone about at Arkansas, despite the lack of success, which a lot of times gets overshadowed because of being in the Western Division, with the teams you have to compete with there in the Western Division. If you go and look, even with the 3-9 season, look at the productivity of the running game for Arkansas the last 3 years. It's right on par with some of your better teams in the country. They just haven't been able to get the other part of the offense going. Well, now they've got that. Can they get the defense right? Last year's defense was absolutely atrocious, first in passing defense in the SEC conference, which knocked him down to the number 11 total defense because their passing defense was so bad, which in part had to do with the lack of depth at the linebacking position. They got ate up on post routes, spread themselves out. They couldn't get, you go back and you look at the Auburn game, late in that game, they go into OT and you look at it, Sean White was able to really spread them thin, and when he got to moving with his legs, that's when Arkansas really felt the pain. So they actually picked up several guys this year's class that are linebackers. Linebackers is what they do. They're not guys that they're bringing in from defensive ends or whatnot, which they had to do last year. They had D ends playing in the linebacking position because they had no depth, and so this year that is. I'm looking to see how this defense can bounce back from having such a bad year last year. It was to the point where Arkansas fans who loved Rob Smith a year ago were ready to see him get fired after last season. There were some fans that were on that bus because the defense had gotten so bad. And the talent is there. They're very deep in the secondary. So I'm curious to see how that translates after this last year.